This video is sponsored by Clash Royale. Hey guys, this is Austin. With flagship smartphones costing in excess of $1,000 sometimes, it really got me thinking, is it possible to get yourself an actually decent smartphone for less than $200? Which brings us here. So in front of me, I have 4 phones all costing less than $200. So I just took a look at the Nokia 2 as part of my Why Does Nokia Exist in 2018 video, and my verdict on it was actually really positive. So for $100, you're going to be getting some premium build quality features like an actual aluminum chassis, a giant 4100 mAh battery, as well as decent software, a nice screen. There really wasn't a lot to complain about besides the performance. Move up to the blue, and for another $40, you're getting a much larger phone. So this actually looks a lot more modern in a lot of ways. I feel like the main thing that you're going to immediately notice is the 18:9 aspect ratio on the screen. There's still going to be bezels, but they're a lot smaller than on the Nokia. One thing that is added on the blue though is a rear-facing fingerprint sensor, something that is really nice to see on a budget device like this. Spend another $30 though, and you can get yourself the Doogee Mix. Now this phone easily feels like it could cost twice its price. So the first thing you notice is the near bezel-less design. Yeah, there's gonna be a tiny bezel up top, and there is a fairly big chin, but it looks very distinctive, and that combined with the heft, as well as the nice metal build, the glass front and back, this really does feel like a phone that could easily cost $500. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, so with that chin comes a fingerprint sensor that's going to be down here. Unfortunately, you still have on-screen Android keys, which feels like a little bit of a waste, and also, very bizarrely, the front-facing camera is on the bottom right side, but I guess they didn't really have anywhere else to put it. With the new G3, you're getting something that looks very, very similar to a certain series of Samsung Galaxy devices, but that's actually not going to be a bad thing in my opinion. So around back, it's got that same sort of curved edges, you've got the dual cameras as well as the fingerprint sensor, but interestingly, you're also going to be getting a tapered glass finish on the back, as well as even on the display. It does curve a little bit on the edges. And bizarrely, even though they did add a USB-C port, the only of these phones that actually does have USB-C, they removed the headphone jack, which weirdly the Galaxy S9 actually was able to keep this generation. As far as the screens go, all 4 phones actually do have decent displays. So the Nokia 2 has a 5-inch 720p panel. Step up to the blue and you're getting that taller 18:9 aspect ratio with a 1440x720 resolution. However, it's going to be stretched on a 6-inch display, which does look a little bit soft sometimes. The Doogee is rocking a 5.5-inch 720p panel, and interestingly, this is actually going to be a Samsung AMOLED panel. Now the colors, to my eye, are going to be a little bit oversaturated, but it's a good looking panel. However, my favorite is actually going to be on the new. So this is still a 5.7-inch 720p panel, same as basically all of these. However, the color, the brightness, the contrast, and especially the viewing angles really do set this a slight bit above the rest of the other phones. When you're spending $200 on a smartphone, you shouldn't expect any kind of crazy performance. However, 2 of these phones actually do perform pretty well. One of the phones that does not, however, is the Nokia 2. Now this is honestly a case where I feel like Nokia made a lot of the right decisions when they were designing this phone, but I think they cheaped out just a little bit too much when it comes to performance. So inside, you're going to find a Snapdragon 212 processor, which is a very old, very slow quad-core chip, and that is going to be paired with a mere 1 GB of RAM and 8 GB of storage. Now, the 8 gigs of storage you can kind of get around because you do have a microSD card slot, but only 1 gig of RAM and that slow CPU just makes Android feel not great. Move up to the Vivo and you're going to be getting an upgraded Snapdragon 425 processor. Now it's still going to be quad core, however they're going to be updated Cortex A53s, which is pretty much shared with the rest of these phones. And importantly, you're going to be getting 3 gigs of RAM as well as 32 gigs of storage. That's going to be plenty to run pretty much any kind of Android app or game right now. And on top of that, what you're going to be getting is a pretty decently sized 3000 mAh battery. Interestingly, both the Doogee as well as the new are rocking very similar specs. So they each have the MediaTek 6757 8-core processor, they're both paired with 4 GB of RAM, and they both also have 64 GB of built-in storage with microSD expandability. The biggest difference here is that while the new has a 3000 mAh battery, the Doogee is going to have a slightly bigger 3380 mAh cell. That was a lot of words. Use these phones in the real world though, and you'll see that this is one of the best examples of why specs and benchmarks aren't everything. So inside Geekbench, what you're going to find is that the Doogee and the new are going to be significantly faster, but in practice, that's actually not the case. So the blue actually feels really nice. Sure, on paper it's not going to have quite the same spec and quite as much memory, but it's fairly snappy, it's going to be responsive, and it is going to have the power to do some gaming. However, when you step up to the Doogee, what you're gonna find is something that feels really, really old school. There's one clear reason for that. The software is straight garbage town. Now, I think what it is going to be a really poorly optimized build of Android paired with a pretty heavy skin. So when I'm scrolling around here, what I feel is just the frame rate is slow, it doesn't feel responsive. It really feels like I'm using a phone from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And that's totally not okay at any price, especially when you consider that cheaper phones are going to perform and feel much, much better. The best of both worlds though is going to be the new. So not only do you have the on-paper specs and the potential of those specs, but you also have a build of Android which is going to be fairly clean and, you know, not laggy and slow. Now sure, if you put this side by side with something like a Pixel, it's not going to be able to hold up. But for a normal person just to pick up the phone and use, it is going to be totally respectable. And of course, what better way to take advantage of those awesome specs than by playing some Clash Royale, the sponsor of today's video. Don't you love my super clean segue? I've had a lot of travel lately, which has given me a lot of time to play some mobile games, and I found that Clash Royale has legitimately taken up almost all of my phone gaming time. Clash Royale is a free-to-play game where you can duel players in real time while unlocking arenas, cards, and collecting treasure. Now I gotta say, I'm not usually into freemium mobile games, but Clash Royale is really well done. So it's really simple to be able to get into a match, and once you get in there, while it's easy to learn, there's plenty of depth to make it challenging, and you can still play with your friends as well. And if you really want to get into it, they released a new feature called Clan Wars, where you can assemble a clan and compete against others in a series of battle modes to see who's the best. So if this looks cool to you, you can check it out at the link in the description, or you can just search up Clash Royale on Google Play as well as the App Store. While it might be slow, the Nokia 2 has the cleanest build of Android here. Now right now it's running on Android 7, although it will be getting an update to Oreo pretty soon, but even though this isn't an Android 1 device, it really does feel like it. There's essentially no bloat, and actually Nokia has been pretty good with updates too. The new G3 isn't far off. Now yes, there are a couple of apps and they've done a little bit of tweaking, but for the most part you are getting a stock build of Android. What you're not necessarily getting though is any real guarantee of solid Android updates in the future, but right now, seems to be working out okay if you don't mind taking the risk. Come over to the blue and well, we've got some software issues. First of all, it is a pretty offensive skin. So not only do you not even have an app drawer, but there's a lot of bloat on this guy. Now I get it, they've got to make some sacrifices to be able to hit this price point, but if this is me, I would put some serious work into cleaning up as much as I could, changing the launcher, because right now, yeah, not good. Whereas the Doogie has, well, some straight garbage town software that I've already complained about, but yeah, it's just not good. But what could be good are the cameras on all 4 of these phones. Or they might not be good actually. They are less than $200, so yeah. So to start with, let's give the $100 Nokia 2 a try. Now this guy has a single 8 megapixel rear facing camera. So as with a lot of things on the Nokia 2, the performance is not going to be fast when it comes to taking photos. And to be fair, this is a really challenging shot, which it really doesn't hold the highlights well in. That's a very white sky. There's some detail there, although it almost seems like the processing is a little bit soft. Although I say processing, most likely it's the less than stellar optics on this tiny little camera. Stepping up in the budget range to the $140 blue, we do get a 13 megapixel camera, and well, it looks bigger, so it must be better, right? Allow camera to phone. Why, yes, I want my camera to phone. That's definitely something I want. All right, so let's throw that really contrasty shot at it. So there's definitely more detail with the blue shot. However, I actually feel like there's even less dynamic range. It really does have a hard time with those highlights, whereas the Nokia actually did a better job of keeping them in. Here's gonna be a shot that's a little bit more normal. Get a excellent close-up of one of Ken's waifus. Yeah, that's actually not bad at all. It's actually fairly sharp. The dynamic range really isn't as big of a problem here with a less contrasty shot. I'm actually pretty happy with that, especially for 140 bucks. Now, a lot of smartphones have some sort of beauty mode in the camera, but something I've never seen is on this blue, we have a beauty video mode. All right, so this is a test of beauty video mode. So you guys can be the judge for yourselves on whether I am more beautiful or I look exactly the same and there's a stupid softening filter on my face. Step up to the $170 Doogie and we're going to find dual cameras. Now here we're going to be getting a 16 megapixel main sensor paired with an 8 megapixel telephoto camera. You know, that's actually not bad. So it does still have issues with the dynamic range, but there's a lot of detail, it's nice and sharp, and importantly, it kept the exposure of the main subject pretty much all in here. Let's try blur mode. Oh, wow, let's not try blur mode, are you serious? That's a photo I just took in 2018. Some quality Doogie images right there. That is, wow. Last but certainly not least, we have the new G3 at $200. Now this guy's also going to be rocking dual cameras. However, what's different about this one is that while they're not only going to be slightly lower resolution, 13+5 as opposed to 16+8, but that secondary camera actually doesn't really function as a telephoto option. It's just going to be there for extra depth data for stuff like the portrait mode. First thing I noticed is that the processing seems to be a lot faster. When you take a shot, there really isn't that huge shutter lag that there was on some of the other phones. Oh man, this portrait mode's not good. Ooh,
I can tell already this is not gonna be pretty. I think you could do something a little bit creative with this, but yeah, portrait mode, not really gonna be the strong suit of sub $200 smartphones. Comparing the selfies, the first thing that jumps out to me is the Doogie. The color is just really, really washed out. Sure, there's detail there, but it just looks terrible. The Nokia actually has very vibrant, rich colors. I think it's maybe a little bit soft. There's definitely some sort of chromatic aberrations going on, or it looks like there's some weird filter almost. It's passable. The new doesn't do a terrible job of getting detail in. There's plenty of dynamic range, but the color just looks off. It just looks very sort of cool, very desaturated. Not a fan. What should be no surprise is that the Blue takes the best selfie. Now, a big part of that is that not only does it have a front-facing flash, but it also has a 16 megapixel selfie shooter, something that's way beyond any of these cameras. All right, so it is conclusion time. Now, coming in at number 4 is the Nokia 2. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot that I like about this phone. The build quality is nice, the battery is going to be massive, and the software is really clean. However, what really undoes it is going to be the super low-end internals. Now, I can kind of get by the low-end processor, but only 1 gig of RAM really makes this almost unusable, especially when you consider that for only a little bit more, you can get a ton more phone. A solid third place goes to the Doogie Mix. Now, there's a lot to like with this phone. The idea that it has a nearly bezel-less design really does make it stand out. I love the heft, the way that the phone feels, and the hardware is great. But what undoes it is the software. I said it before and I'll say it again, it is a straight up deal breaker for me. A very solid second place goes to the Blue Vivo XL3 Plus. Now, there is a ton to like with this guy. $140 price tag feels like it's right in the sweet spot. You're getting a solid build, you're getting a nice size screen, you're getting decent performance, the cameras are decent, the selfie camera is great. Really, the only major problem is that the software is going to need some tweaking. Now, if you don't mind putting a little bit of time into your phone to customize things like your launcher, then the Blue is really worth a look. If you're buying a phone under $200 though, I really do like the new G3. It pairs an awesome build that really is very similar to phones such as the Galaxy S9, which costs 3, 4, 5 times as much, with a really nice screen. You're getting that taller aspect ratio. The camera is going to be decent, but importantly, the software is clean and the performance is top notch. It's a close one. I feel like a lot of people might be happier with the Blue, but if it's my money, I'm going to spend a little bit more to get a much nicer overall package.